This may or may not surprise you, but some of the most common questions that I get as a psychologist are about narcissism. And I think that that makes sense because narcissistic personality for a lot of people can feel very confusing. I can share that just sort of overall, one of the essences of narcissism is that how a narcissist appears on the surface doesn't actually reflect what's going on underneath. So sometimes the cover, so to speak, doesn't really truly reflect the book. And what I mean when I say that is that there is a lot of times the air of superiority that a narcissist will carry, will ooze almost. And yet, underneath it all, a lot of times there is actually an insecurity, a fragility, a lower self esteem that's at work. And the superiority is kind of the defense against that fear, that sense of, oh my gosh, maybe actually I really am weak. Maybe I really am inferior. I'll explain that a little bit more. But what I want to focus on today in this video, because there is so much spoken about narcissism, we don't need me to reinvent the wheel, but I want to address one specific element: why a narcissist can get so upset if you challenge them. If you challenge them, if you get a little too assertive with a narcissist usually will not like it. And so, really, what we're then talking about is compliance. A narcissist will want compliance from you. And I need to explain, though, the very specific way that they want compliance, why they need compliance from you. Now, the specific way that a narcissist wants compliance is that you be compliant with, you agree with, you support the way the narcissist sees themselves, that you support the image that they have for themselves. Now, the image that the narcissist usually has for themselves is as someone who is important, who is special, and who is superior, just in general, just a superior sort of breed in general. And if you do or say anything which contradicts this image, this role they see themselves occupying in life, they need you to understand they occupy in life. If you do anything to contradict that, that is interpreted as a threat. So, this is the way that they demand compliance. When you challenge the narcissist, when you assert yourself, when you try to, what the narcissist feels like, try to push too much for what you think, what you believe, what you want, what you need, when you assert yourself too much with a narcissist, that can trigger anger in the narcissist. And we're talking, it can trigger anger sometimes that seethes, seething anger, anger that stews and brews, anger that boils. That's the kind of anger that it can trigger. Anger at times that can even turn into rage. The thinking is, in the narcissist mentality, later in those private moments, they're thinking to themselves, how could they? How could they? How dare they? It is a feeling of indignation, of disgust, of contempt, how anybody could challenge them. Now, a lot of times the people around the narcissist are thinking, anyone, I'm not just anyone. I'm your wife or your husband, or I'm your best friend, or I'm your family member, I'm your sister, your brother. In that moment, when you trigger a narcissist, you have triggered a primitive emotional reaction that is not rational. In that moment, you are not the wife, the husband, the brother, the best friend. You are not. You are like anybody who would have the gall, who would dare to do that to them, who would dare to challenge them, who would dare to suggest that they are not the image that they see themselves as, which is really, in many ways, untouchable, so special, so strong, so intelligent, so important that nobody should challenge them, that they are, in a way, beyond reproach, that they are immune to reproach, that also they are immune to criticism. And you're thinking a lot of times in these moments, wait a minute, but I wasn't even criticizing you. I was just saying what I thought. Here's the thing, to someone who is a narcissist, especially a severe narcissist, this isn't just an opinion being shared from one person to another. This is an assault. An assault. That is how it feels. And sometimes you'll hear people talk in the mental health world about this being a narcissistic injury. What I would say is it actually feels like an outright assault. An assault. Here's the thing, if you can't really understand it, if you can't really truly wrap your head around how someone could think like this, it's probably a sign that this isn't a problem that you suffer from yourself. So when we talk about the problem, it brings us to, well, what the heck is the problem? What is the problem? What is the root problem that caused this sort of narcissism in a person? And a lot of times it is a lack of empathy early in life. So early in life, in really early important relationships, there was often a lack of empathy so that that young person didn't feel that their needs, their feelings, their thoughts, their inner experience was mirrored, was noticed, was cared for, was tended to. They didn't get enough empathy. And actually, Heinz Kohut, who is really the developer of self psychology, talks so eloquently about this. But it is a problem of empathy a lot of times that causes this kind of rupture, these kinds of impairments in the narcissist's difficulty just seeing themselves as an everyday person like the rest of us. Like we all have needs, we all have personalities. We're all really the same, even though we look different on the surface. We all really have the same needs. A lot of us, so many of us have some of the same strengths, We all have so many of the same weaknesses, right? The narcissist, though, isn't able to see themselves as just one of the regular people. The narcissist can't afford to see themselves as just another person, just a part of the group, just another person on the bus, or just a regular person in the crowd with everybody else. Why? Because they never got the things that they needed, the most important emotional attunement early on in life. That sense of empathy, somebody there to mirror them and make them feel like, whoa, I see you. You are special. Every little kid needs to feel that real sense of specialness. Why? So that as they grow up and start to encounter a pretty tough, sometimes even cruel world, that young individual, because they got the empathy, they are able to regulate their self esteem. They have a healthier self esteem because somebody mirrored them, because they got the empathy that they need, because somebody saw them and valued, made that little kid feel like their feelings and thoughts, their inner experiences were truly valued. Well, because the narcissist didn't get enough of what they needed when they were really young, their self esteem, they never got their fill. So their self esteem fluctuates back and forth between these vacillating senses of feeling inferior and trying to counterbalance that and tell themselves, actually, that's wrong. No, I'm actually superior. So then the scale tips this way, and then they feel superior. But then something happens where something in life knocks them down and chips away at their self esteem. And then all of a sudden, the scale flips the other way. And then all of a sudden, they feel like, oh my gosh, I feel inferior. And they're terrified that's true. but then they try to build their defenses back up again and feel like, no, 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 I'm actually special. I'm powerful. Look at me. I'm actually better than everybody else. And the scales you see, the self esteem regulation, it never regulates to a strong, consistent core. It never regulates sufficiently if there was this absence of empathy early on. So, see, when you say what you say sometimes or do the things you do and you feel like it's perfectly normal, but the narcissist reacts negatively and feels challenged, feels threatened, you have to understand that it's because you are assaulting their overall self esteem. Their self esteem hangs in the balance in those moments. Their self esteem, because it isn't consistent and anchored and strong, it is subject to the whims of whatever happens in any given moment or circumstances each day. It is like a storm, it is like weather, the self esteem of a narcissist. It can change that quick. Imagine what that feels like for that person to feel subjected, to be blown about by the winds in that way when this is their self esteem. What we really need in life to feel good and safe and protected. What we need so that we don't react so quickly or negatively or misperceive in our environment things that actually aren't happening. Well, of course, and many of you who have experience in having a relationship with a narcissist, a close relationship of some kind, you know that what happens often when you trigger a narcissist, when they feel threatened, is they will follow with a punishment. They will choose from a menu of punishments, a menu that they have probably been working from for many, many, many years, a menu that they have had to turn to because there are countless experiences, situations, circumstances in life that have upset them, triggered them, threatened them, their ego, their self esteem before. So they have to turn to this menu. They review as if picturing reading glasses tipping them down on their nose. They mentally kind of review the list on their menu of different punishments that they may resort to try to teach you that you have hurt them. Now, they do this not often in a really malicious way. They do this because this is how they deal with feeling that hurt. They feel when their self esteem is assaulted, they feel terribly hurt in that moment. They may not act like they feel hurt. They may not look like it because, if they have an anger reaction or a temper tantrum or they explode verbally, it doesn't look like that person feels really hurt and bad. But that is just the surface of how they have tried to learn to deal with some of these feelings that they have of weakness. Maybe in that moment, they are struggling. They are terrified. Oh my gosh, am I inferior? Is this person right? Is something wrong with me? Am I defective? Some of those old voices can come back to haunt them. So when they turn to punishments to teach someone else in their life a lesson, they're actually doing it because they can't manage the sad, disappointed, sometimes even terrified, scared feelings that they have deep down. All right. So I hope this has been helpful in helping you understand if this is something you've been struggling with or you've been on the receiving end of, why someone who is narcissistic seems to get so triggered, seems to get so upset, seems to demand compliance from you. So, as I close, I would like to just make sure that there is clarity on what the need for compliance is. And so I'll just share a few questions that can kind of get you thinking, and you'll be able to figure out the answer if you don't already have it in your mind. Does the individual, does the narcissist demand compliance with what time you wake up in the morning or what time you go to bed? Does the narcissist demand compliance in terms of, let's say, what types of television shows that you watch when you're at home in your off time? Does the narcissist demand compliance about, let's say, what type of fruit you pick out when you're doing grocery shopping at the market? You know the answer. No, the narcissist doesn't demand that compliance. Does the narcissist demand compliance in every aspect of your personal life? And you know the answer to that too. No, they don't. They don't. What does the narcissist demand compliance? In what area do they demand compliance in? The way you see them and treat them. They demand that you see them in the special, important, superior way, the higher hierarchical position and role they see themselves in comparison to others. All right? I hope this has been helpful. I also have some other videos on narcissism here on my YouTube channel, Dr. Seth Psychologist.